Hi, everybody. Welcome back. So today we have an exciting discussion about the revolution of AI that is affecting the learning industry. The learning industry is corporate learning or higher education, and this is how people interact with systems to learn things, to get better at what they do, to maybe have educational outcomes, the whole spectrum of things that could be considered as learning. And today I have a very special guest, Alexandra Lect, who is the founder of a company called EdTake and operating in this very space, this very exciting space that we're talking about. So, Alexandra, welcome. And would you like to give a little bit of introduction about yourself?
Thank you very much, Ashwin, to invite me to this podcast. So yes, I'm Alex. I'm an engineer specialized in mathematics. I actually did my studies in London at King's College. Started my career in finance for about 4 years between New York and London. Then I resigned to start my first edtech company in 2012 called EduFactory. It's a training agency. So we've been creating tailor-made content for large groups, small universities, business schools, mainly in Europe through any type of modality. This company has been acquired in 2023 by Alten, European leader of consulting and digital transformation. And in the meantime, a year before that, we created EdTake, which is focusing on AI for learning and education as a whole. And I think we're going to talk about that in more details in a few minutes.
Very good. So amazing to have you with us. So we talk about the AI revolution. Really, the historical way that learning and development departments have worked in corporations and really higher education and how lecturers work as well. There's a lot of static content. So folks are making static content, sticking it on systems or delivering it in a time and space event. And then fingers crossed, hoping all of that just works. And with AI, of course, we have a revolution in this space and the opportunity to change what we do. So how are you seeing AI affect that traditional paradigm? And how is AI affecting what we say is learning?
Well, it's a very interesting starting point. Obviously, for years, we've been creating what we call content at rest. And it was okay as long as you could update it and actually identify when the content was obsolete and needed some changes. And it was fine up until AI arrived. And then, the way people are behaving changed at the same time. So that's actually what we have looked at when we started the R&D of EdTake is what is AI going to change in the processes of creating content from A to Z. From our opinion, it changes everything. So if you're taking a project as a whole, it starts with the brainstorming phase, right? And AI is best for brainstorm. Like I'm guessing you're brainstorming and talking to AI all the time to get ideas and to even submit documents and ask what do you think and you summarize, etc., etc. So first stage brainstorming is completely revolutionized by AI, and that's the first thing that we've been looking at with our copilot. Then there is the instructional design, and that's a very tricky point. Instructional design is assisted by AI. It's not completely done by it. So there's a human in the center. That's why our solution is called Copilot, the first brick, but it's helped a lot. And you're saving so much time to keep the value where actually human is bringing the best value. And then there's production. And that is the same thing for production. How long does it take in the past? I'm saying like in the old world to produce manual, videos, motion design, quizzes, exercises, serious games, etc. So obviously the production is changing very fast. And that's the part that is evolving extremely fast now with video generating content, avatars, etc. So I would say everything is changed, and the process of, adopting new ways of creating content is the main challenge right now.
So on the design point, I have some controversial ideas about design, usually, if you're watching, And one of the things that I've been thinking about recently, I've written it in a couple of articles, is that design corporate learning, particularly, but it's kind of true also for educational establishments, that you really have three types of design. And design, the first type is tool-led design. So I bought this tool and therefore everything that I design is going to be done in that tool because pretty much it's easy to do that. And the idea of pedagogy just goes out the window. It doesn't matter, right? Second type of design is stakeholder-driven design. So I have a stakeholder in the organization. They've asked the learning department to go produce this thing. They don't care about learning design. They just want that thing. So I want a video, I want a brochure, whatever it is. And the learning department will usually just go and do that if the stakeholder is powerful enough in the organization. And then the third type is the thing that we in the industry usually talk about, and that is we should do proper considered design with experts feeding in their years of pedagogical expertise into some beautifully crafted experience that hopefully will gain some cognitive, motivational, behavioral outcomes at the end. And for me, most of that stuff just doesn't matter, because even the best designers in the world will be constrained by tools. They'll be constrained by stakeholders. They'll be constrained by budgets. So ultimately, this utopia of having design-driven pedagogy, I don't think it really exists, apart from a few programs where you have innovation programs and you're not really that constrained by budgets. Maybe it exists, but generally speaking, for the vast majority of things that are produced in the learning sector, it's difficult for me to see that design was ever really a consideration. What do you think? Because you mentioned design and people working with machines. How does that work in practice? And I don't mean how could it work if we had the right tools, but day to day, how does it actually work?
Okay, it's a very vast question you're asking and very interesting. And obviously something that we are addressing every day. So taking example 2 and example 3 that you have given, I think it's a mix of those together. What I mean by that is we have stakeholders. We have people who are actually used to contribute in a project. And then you have the processes of making them work together. I don't believe in one tool doing everything. I agree completely with you. I believe in collaborative work around AI tools. And that's actually why we've called our solution a copilot, because it can help every step of the way. The complexity that you're describing is coming from the fact that, in our opinion, a subject matter expert is different from one establishment to another. Sometimes they have instructional design knowledge, sometimes they have none, and they're called the same. So you need to be able to adapt, and AI can do that. It can actually identify the technicity of a question, and then it can identify if the people working together are very good at the topic or if they need actually to have insight from the model that we're providing. So what I believe in is already working. We have 150 clients in about a year and a half, so we have a lot of data of usage. And what we see right now is the collaboration with a tool that's here to assist, and that's it. Since our copilot is using many AI models that we fine-tuned, every step of the way, every stage of the project is not the same AI that's being used. It's not the same AI that's vectorizing the document and brainstorming with it. It's not the same AI working on learning objective. It's not the same AI working, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a bunch of AI that we are improving all the time to make sure that not only it's around the human usage, but on top of that, it adapts with the differences between one corporate training department to another. So it's a mix of those. I don't know if it's clear.
Yes, your specific tool does have these capabilities.
Yeah.
I was thinking more broadly around if we were to take the learning industry en masse and we were to say, let's say the learning industry has 1,000 designers. Yeah. It's way more than that, of course, but let's say the learning industry has 1,000 designers and each of those designers is involved in 10 projects. Fine, that's 10,000 projects through the year. Of those 10,000 projects, how many of them will actually use fully evidence-based and expertise-based design in a way that the outcomes will be structured for pedagogic benefit? I suspect it's not a big number.
I agree with you on this. If you're looking at the trend, and I'm not here to judge, we're there to provide a solution for users. If you look at the trends, we are always looking for a faster way to answer a need. And that's not something that we can stop, from my opinion. So and I saw that since day one when we started EdTech. We had the first version of the software where a lot of things were manual and you could actually implement your way of doing instructional design and you could actually put some methods. And then you had this tiny button on the right, generate with AI. And we've been tracking the usage on this tool. So again, I'm talking about my tool, but it illustrates a way of functioning of the market. At the end of the proof of concept, like you have 3 or 4 months on this one, we had like 80% only people only clicking on the generate. So it's kind of a trend where either you propose tools that are helping to brainstorm around what you're describing without, forcing or helping too much to automate things, or you can actually help do the actual instructional design. And that's what we're proposing. And I'm talking about that in that way. It's not just a button. It's a way of providing instruction, but to facilitate the work of brainstorming and going deep into a method.
Absolutely. We'll pause the design discussion there. But I think for those of you who are watching and you are in the instructional design space, of course, contact Alex and have a look at the solution. And if we move from design to something that's maybe challenge driven. So we have the Utopia, and the Utopia is we can design things that are personalized, engaging, gamified, experiential, something, whatever the type of pedagogy might be. And we have workflows, and we have the capability of retrieval augmented generation as a service. And all of these things lead us to being able to do things in a way that's either better, faster, or more cost effective. But there are always barriers. What are the big barriers in our industries, whatever industry we want to talk about? But we're talking about content design, content creation, which touches on marketing and sales and communication and all of these things as well. But what are the barriers to doing this properly?
Again, it's a very good question. There are many. I would say the first thing that we saw, and I think it's a general opinion, is the FOBO effect that is really, pushing people to test a lot of things without going deep into what are they really going to be using it for. So as a whole, the first answer for me would be, change management as a real mission before testing out anything. What I mean by that is usually people, when you're proposing AI solutions, they're trying to use the old processes with it. And most of the time they're saying, yeah, but I'm going to have friction there or there, depending on their processes. I really think that the biggest challenge is for most of the people in the learning industry to understand that there was a before and an after AI in education, and everything changes. Once you understand this and you understand that the old barriers are not there anymore, maybe, or just understanding that the environment as a whole has completely changed and you need to start from a blank page when you are rethinking processes, then you can actually start to understand which solution you're going to use for what and think about the end goal, and that's it. So I think the biggest barrier is for people to understand how much and how deep the change has been, and then to be able to, provide solutions that are connected to each other.
And how do we do that? Because change management is a tricky business. And I've had podcasts in the past with people who are change managers, and that's what they do. And one of the basic concepts around whether it's process redesign or whether it's organizational change or culture change, one of the basic concepts is that we need a little bit of education to make sure that folks are aware of what's happening in the AI space, what the capabilities are of AI, why we should change in the first place, as well as tackling things like trust and fear around AI is going to take all of our jobs and what are we going to do then? And it's quite a complex area. And with that being a big barrier, at the people side of things, how do we start to address that?
You mean as a whole, or as a provider like us when we are starting to talk about corporate learning departments?
So from both sides, because it's an interesting point that you make, that some of this will be market driven and some of this will be individual organization driven. But the scale of the disruption that we have with AI means that to some degree, everybody has a little bit of a role to play in moving the conversation forward and supporting a broad base of awareness. So from a supplier side, of course, what could you be doing, but what would you want your clients to be doing?
Linking that to the previous question about, defining the real end game, the end goals is essential without making any barriers. So when we start talking to corporate training departments or higher education establishments, we're talking about that first. Like, what are you trying to do? How are you doing it now? And then even for us who are, software provider, we're doing kind of a service, consulting mission for free in the first meeting, saying, okay, this is what you've been doing. This is what we're proposing. And here are the examples of our many clients in the same kind of field or using the same processes. Then I think it has to be driven by results. So saying, let's take an example. It doesn't have to be a proof of concept with them to be paid or whatever, but to take an example, and that's usually done in half an hour. And you say, okay, you have this. Let's talk about corporate learning. You have a business unit manager. How long does it take him to implement a new strategy, a new learning, or a new process? Usually they give you a length and they explain you the way it goes. And then you're saying, okay, so now if I give you this solution that can do that, what can it do? And you're actually kind of, working, just asking questions, and the answers, you are receiving them, bit by bit, and they're actually building their own process. So I think the best way to address is making them find the solution, because you will never know their internal processes and things that are blocking. So they will know it best. That's the way we approach it, and it works pretty well.
Yeah, maybe. I think it depends vastly on what the organization is and how they operate, and there are so many variables in that. So let's talk a little bit about dynamic content, because we have the concept of content at rest or static content, and we have the potential for dynamic content. And dynamic content could be dynamic design. It could be the dynamic media creation. It could be creation at the point in time of need. It could be a wide variety of things. Where do you see the biggest opportunity in the space for platforms to support real-time content, or to support content always being up to date and relevant for learners?
The opportunity is everywhere, to be frank. And sorry if I'm making too much reference about our company, but that's definitely something we've been working on. As we were saying at the intro, this is really our field. Content opportunities, are everywhere. That's why we've built two solutions that are, unbricked to one another. The first one we design is the Copilot for learning creators, and the second one is the tutor for the learners. Using this kind of circular system, you have a Copilot that's helping taking content at rest and making modules around skills that can evolve with time, with update that you're making, and obviously from the feedback of the tutor, so directly from the learner. So AI is the only solution ever to be able to propose that. So huge opportunity to never have content at rest anymore and to make it evolve all the time. Finishing on the Copilot, we have linked it to skills ontology. So now you can have real-time evolution of skills by categories of skills and sub-skills, and then level that you're defining in your organization, helping you create learning persona evolving all the time with AI. And then looking at the tutor, the second brick. Obviously, we used to talk about adaptive learning. Actually, it was only simple algorithm making you decide if you're going left or right with condition. AI is another thing. And when people are using adaptive learning with AI, I think it's wrong. It's a new way of learning. And it's personalized to the infinite. So basically, learners, because your tool or tutor has memory, can actually know what type of content you like, which type of content you're making mistake on, and your level of attention, et cetera, et cetera. So again, going back to your question, there's a huge opportunity to change the way we are addressing learners, from the experience, the automation of taking learning traces back to the conceptor, to the creator. So there is a huge opportunity everywhere. It doesn't mean, again, that it's replacing, it's changing and it's opening barriers. If you would have said to someone 3 years ago, I'm going to create you a skill ontology and it's going to be live, it's going to work in real time, like from one day to another, people would have laughed, Now it's possible and it works, breaking barriers. Yeah.
So I'm going to tease some of these barriers now, because this is very interesting. And
go ahead.
So it seems that there are probably 3 areas of barriers that we haven't really covered. Now, area 1 is if we have a new and exciting paradigm where we can say learning interactions with systems, because that's what we're talking about. Learning interactions with systems can be conversational, they can be supported by memory, and they can therefore be personalized to whatever degree the data allows us to personalize, because it does depend on having personal data, individual level data, if you want to personalize to the individual. So there's a little bit of a data dependency. But the second thing is that legacy systems are pretty much learning management systems in most organizations. And the level of data there, not only the level of data, but the level of history of content at rest, is a significant legacy to try and get over if you want to do something new. Because nearly always there'll be some part of the company that says, but what about this system? We want to use this system. We have to for reasons, whatever those reasons are. So there are those couple of areas where I think there potentially is a barrier. But then the third part of it is about effectiveness evaluation, figuring out what worked, what the next step needs to be, and proving that entire thing in something that's auditable for a regulatory environment. If you have a highly regulated industry, for example. So on those 3 areas, we have legacy systems, we have data, and we have auditability. How can we progress any of these 3 areas? Because these are significant barriers, so far as I can tell.
Okay. About the last one is the most complex one. auditability is like very complex, and we'll have to go in depth into how an infrastructure of fine-tuned AI model is working. So I'm going to leave this one on the side because it's more for the IT department. It's going to be very technical. I'll focus on the middle and the first one. The legacy system is the second one you've listed. And I don't see that as a real barrier because using LTI integration, you can use and connect and receive, learning traces. So you can have a new system with AI integrated into an existing LMS. The only question is going back to the first bit of what do you do with data? The data is actually the biggest problem. For this, what we're seeing right now is many corporate train, well, not even corporate train important, but many large accounts and medium accounts are sending up accounts with AI providers to create their own data lake of information. Honestly, the answer is going to be in their hand because you have those big IT departments starting to create so many Excel forms that you have to fill in to start working and providing AI to work with them. And it used to be like huge accounts, and now it's like even mid-cap are asking you that and getting to smaller companies. So I think the usage of data is going to be something that is at the hand of the company itself. Two solutions: either they understand the value of it for providers that are proving and guaranteeing the good usage of data. And we're lucky to be in Europe for that with the AI Act and the way you use not only personal data, but also training data, learning traces. It's really going to be in their hand. Either they block everything up and they don't do anything with it. I don't believe in it. I think it's going to be a culture of using data wisely, or they open it, obviously, and they propose a way to actually connect and make a good use out of it. We are working on a very, very interesting European call for tender with the European Commission. It's called Prometheus. And the whole point is to create a data space for education, a European data space for education. One of the biggest missions we've been working on is data operability. So creating protocol of operability, saving enough security using smart contracts between one provider to another one so that you can actually use data anonymized, so that you can actually use it without making a wrong usage of it. And I think that's the future.
Yeah, on the data point, absolutely. On the LMS point, I think the easy answer is to say we integrate. I think the more difficult answer is to think about what the future of interoperable systems might be. If fundamentally we don't need some of these systems, why are we being interoperable, right?
I agree, but I don't think that the future is without LMS. I think it depends on the usage of the learners. Every time there is a revolution, and this one is very different with AI, we tend to want to replace one thing to another. So maybe 10 years or 5 years ago, 100% of the traffic was through the LMS, or let's say 30 years ago, 100% of the traffic was directly in the class and face-to-face. Then he moved into LMS, and now he's going to move maybe to AI agents to do reskilling, upskilling. Like it's a different way of learning so that you can actually address a conversational agent to train or to get debugged on a problem. Go to the LMS to do academic learning because you need to have those 2 hours about something strategic, and go to class because you are talking to an expert providing something else. So it's going to be, I think, a matter of putting some weights, and obviously those weights are going to be changing.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the emphasis of on static content, because if we say that the future is a mix of static and dynamic content, then of course you need static and dynamic systems. If the future is dynamic, then you don't need static systems. And I think that's just a perspective, right? Every company is going to be different, which is the interesting part of this discussion. On the technical side of things, you mentioned that we can leave some things for IT teams. Of course we can. Why not? You and I can have this discussion at a later date. But I want to ask a little bit about the technicalities of skills, because you mentioned skills as well. The skills are, whether it's ontology or taxonomy, skills are something that is, for me, it's basically intangible or low quality data in most organizations. And part of the reason for that is that we have no real way of measuring skills that is scalable. And we can have surveys. So you go onto a platform and everybody says communication skills, I'm going to score myself an 8. Great. It's highly, highly subjective and subject to confidence and all of these things. And the relationship between skills and learning interventions and the relationship between skills and task completion, I've never seen this link made in the data. And I don't mean conceptually, but I mean, do we have reliable conversions between one and another? Is there an aggregation system? Does this rely on some assumptions in terms of data ecology? What do you think about that?
I think this is going to come because we've been working for finding an option and finding ways of linking tasks and skills, and this is going to come for sure with the speed at which systems are becoming interpretable and the models are getting better and better. Right now, there is no way from everything that I've seen to actually measure if the skill has been acquired and it helps you do the job more efficiently. The only thing I can say right now, and it's actually good news for the moment, is that the human interaction to measure if the skill has been acquired and the task is done faster and better, that's possible. So it's in the hand of the project manager, it's the hand of the people, managing efficiency, to be able to see if this is true in the business, true for any process to be implemented. And this is working. A system that's not 100% automated with AI or any software that has a human in the loop and works is a working system for me. And I think that's what's working right now in the corporate learning field, saying that going back to the example of the corporate learning I was talking about before, we have clients who the end user is the head of the business unit, and they are improving by more than 70% the efficiency of time to skill, saying they are the ones saying now, every time I need to change something, it goes way much faster. And they can see the result because they are the business unit manager. They're not training designer, they're not instructional designer, they're business unit managers. So they see actual results with their human eyes, and it works. But we'll come to that. I'm pretty sure we'll come to that.
But that requires observation in the workplace. And this is
but
yeah, I agree. I think it does. It needs something like that anyway. So let's move from skills, because I think over the last few years, I've seen lots of companies become skill-based organizations, which I think is a poorly thought through transformation for most organizations who don't do the observational stuff that we've just discussed. Having lots of people go score themselves on a system and then go and take some learning content is not valuable or useful in the skills arena. I think that's a leap of logic that I would not want to make. I wouldn't want to bet lots of money on it anyway. But it leads us to the idea of transformation. What do we see is coming in the next few years? And not being product specific, just evangelize about the future. What could the future look like in 5 years for corporate learning?
Okay. First, I really think that AI tutors or agent, depending on how the provider would call them, well, the way we call it, a tutor, is going to be everywhere, right? So I see two main things for the learner to start with. I see a way of, being able to ask anything for on-the-job training, like really, I need to do that and I'm stuck. Can you help me out? And that's going to be everywhere. I've been in the learning industry for the last 15 years. And most of the time, what we see happening in the corporate world is what you are already doing in your private life. Aren't you asking ChatGPT every day when you need to have an information? So why would it not be the same case, in the corporate world for the learners? So I see different of agents either implemented into the processes or just, on the side, being able to answer any type of question about any type of content that are connected to your skill ontology, like not outside of it, like if you're asking about a recipe for a pizza or whatever. So I see like really the employees being able to ask questions everywhere, and that being integrated, and that being obviously looped to, the training department. And I really think the training department is going to be maybe merged with the skills, managers, and HR is going to be more, collaborative department where HR and learning are not separated, because we see that way too often still. They should be working together and making things, evolve together. This new HR department, like new in the way that I see it in the future, will have a strategical place in terms of efficiency of companies, and it would be like place in maybe like top 2, top 3, in the line of decision making. So that's the vision that we have of the learning department. I mean, that's my opinion. So a lot of automation, a lot of agents, and a more merged system of HR management between training and HR.
So that's the future of potentially learning departments.
Yeah. And learning experience for employees as well.
So I guess my position or my question probably came from a slightly different angle, and that was that
Okay.
if we have technical systems and we have human hierarchies that match technical systems, so multi-agent frameworks, human hierarchies, whatever terminology we're going to use, people and machines working hand in hand for a better outcome. We also potentially have flatter structures. Maybe we need fewer managers. Maybe we have fewer people who are doing some of the work that they're doing now. And maybe people are doing different kinds of work. So we have all of these things which are potential for change. And in the new world, we have, of course, what you've said, where you might merge HR with learning. In most places, learning is already part of HR, as well as talent and reward and these things, all generally come under a people function. In a future state where you have a different workforce doing different things, then the role of learning could be anywhere. Do you need a separate department for doing things that are potentially either done up in the operations space? So managers are observing, managers are recommending, managers are interacting with systems. Those systems are intelligent enough to push content or provide recommendations or coach and guide the people who are doing the work. The people who are doing the work are doing different things anyway. And we then have technical systems that are potentially interfacing directly with operations. Reporting and dashboarding can happen in an automated way. Reports can be written, decisions can be taken. A content at rest department. We have two different areas here. We have content at rest and we have facilitated interactions. So this is mentoring, coaching, training courses in a real space, all of these kinds of things. The future role for this department, whether it's merged with HR, whether it's merged with talent and reward, the role of the department itself might also need to change, and the market capability might also change. And my question was coming from this kind of perspective. What a department does, what the market can do, might need to drastically change. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was starting to describe. When I was talking about merging, it was simplifying. Like I'm talking about most of the HR departments are separating talent management, recruitment, and learning. Like most of the time, it's not even the same directors. So like merge everything. For me, change in the role of the HR and learning department integrated is going to be everywhere. Like it's going to be nowhere and everywhere at the same time because like the accountant is learning something and the newcomers on onboarding session are learning something. Learning is going to be everywhere. It has to be, companies evolving all the time and learning all the time, learning on the job and doing also academic learning and compulsory regulatory learning. Learning is going to have to be everywhere. The only evolution that I see is to be able to actually do what people are thinking they're making now, but making it work for sure, and having just no barrier between the content at rest and the all of the tutoring and coaching from those AI agents that are helping employees, on day-to-day, task problems. So it's just, I think it's just a matter of thinking that it's not going to be a huge change, and it's just going to be the application of what we've been talking for the last 10 years, and now it's actually possible. Don't you think?
Yeah, but potentially. I think I can see a future where there are learning in the market, learning providers who have made their entire business about developing static content. And I think that section of the market is at risk. I think there are factors around job security. So there will be companies whose leadership will be placing all of their departments, rightly so, under the scrutiny and thinking about return on investment. And learning departments are typically very bad at demonstrating return on investment. You have learning departments in big companies whose entire role is to outsource things to the market and get e-learning content back. So I can see a chain of events where you say, well, you know what? We have e-learning providers. We no longer need to engage those because we need to save money. We have learning departments who are worried about their jobs, so they're going to start to take on more of the e-learning content. But they don't necessarily have the skills because for many years they've just been outsourcing things to vendors. So now they're going to be looking for new ways to do the things that they couldn't do before. And that means they're going to need some software. They're going to need some support from AI. They're going to need all of these things to try and produce something. Whatever they produce will be what it will be. You also have the democratization of tool sets. So pretty much any ops manager who's running a team of 10, 15, 20 people, you want to make some content, you dip into an AI agent, you make the content, you send it out to everybody. That's very doable in a way that's almost comparable with what most learning departments can do. So there needs to be a USP. There needs to be some kind of special advantage that a learning department has to be able to compete with operational departments. because of democratization. The market itself needs to restructure, moving away from static content development as a default process to doing things that are more engaging, better learning experiences, better use of the tech. That's currently not happening. It's happening in the startup space, it's happening in pockets of innovation. But en masse, if we think about the entire market is still pushing a content at rest paradigm with some AI sprinkle over the top. And the learning market, the in-house market, is still basically outsourcing expertise to vendors in a way that's the lowest possible denominator when it comes to cost. All of these things broadly need to change. And I think the market capability around AI is stimulating that change. So when I think of a 5-year trajectory, I can see companies taking very different decisions around democratization of tool sets, merging of departments. I think an obvious merge for me, I'm somebody who runs a company, you're somebody who runs a company. We don't have learning departments. I don't have a learning department, do you?
We're a learning company, so everyone is learning every day. But I agree with you. I don't have a learning department as a whole.
Right. Let's tease that. Everybody's learning every day. Same. I run a consulting business. Everybody is learning every day. I don't need a department to manage push content.
But that's exactly my point. That's what I was saying before. The idea of, having the HR, let's say learning department everywhere and nowhere at the same time is what I was saying before. So if you have like a business unit, they will need to have some referent inside of the business unit who are creating the learning for the others. Like there would be people doing even R&D to improve the processes. And as you just said, create the content, push it to the units, So that's the way I see the future for learning department is actually to be dispatched in any operational units within every company. So for example, and that's exactly what we have already implemented in our company, like the people who are in charge of product, they're in charge of R&D and teaching the people below. People in charge of sales, they're in charge of R&D, of new techniques, new softwares, and they're in charge of below. There is not an HR saying, I know all of the business units and I'm going to give you the right process for all. It makes no sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I can see a future where you have basically content and operations, and the content, it doesn't necessarily have to be learning. It could be marketing, it could be communications, it could be sales, it could be whatever it is. They all basically have content generation and then human outcomes. And there seems to be synergy with those things. I can see this playing out in a number of different ways. And I think all of these ways are exciting because, disruption's exciting, isn't it? Let's face it. But from my perspective, I don't have a learning department because everybody's always learning. And how much I need to measure that? I don't. I absolutely don't. I need to measure the outcomes. I don't need to measure learning. It's just an attribute that gives me an outcome. Scale is a thing. So if you're highly regulated business, 250,000 people across multiple countries, yes, you have to track things. I get it. That's an artifact of scale, artifact of regulation. But I think changes need to happen because the various attributes that I just mentioned, you have this scrutiny, you have fear for jobs, you have outsourcing for low value, you have the incentivization around spending budgets at the end of the year just because you don't want to lose your budget. To me, that's just a ridiculous mentality for a company to have. We've got to spend this money or somebody will take it away from me. Spend the money if it adds value. Don't spend the money if it doesn't add value, right? The pressure to spend money just because you want to spend it seems crazy, but yet this is how big companies work. So I think a lot of these things are going to get ironed out as cost becomes a big issue for companies, and cost will become a big issue for companies because of things like AI. And the reason AI plays a part is that it's making different businesses competitive in different ways. So now we have a race for efficiency and revenue. And if your race is for efficiency and revenue, you can't ignore one of two things. You have to look at them both. So scrutiny, I think, is important, and we should have scrutiny over things. Why wouldn't we, right? We should think about this in our businesses. So that's the driving force for me saying things are going to change, but it's really good to get your view on how things will change. I'll pivot to one last thing before we close, and that is the people. What about the people? So most learning organizations, training organizations do have trainers, people whose entire role is to take a PowerPoint, stand up in front of a bunch of people and read through it. Some of those people are better than others. Some are more entertaining. Some are pedagogic masterminds. Some will read word for word off a PowerPoint. There is massive variability in how people do those roles. There is also variability in how people come to that role. So some people will be born presenters, some people will be experts in their field, and they have to go and stand up and give a presentation. Some people will come to the end of their useful life as doing something else, and they used to play golf with the CEO. So the CEO says, do you want to run the training department? So we have a whole spectrum of avenues of entry into this role as a trainer or as a facilitator. And those folks also are rightly concerned about the future of their jobs. What do you think the role is for that type of capability in the future of learning?
Again, it's a very simple question. Yeah, many things. Obviously, AI is enhancing the scale and the personalization, but humans are ensuring the meaning and the strategy. I think that obviously, as you're saying, the role is moving from showing something and helping to execute. The execution and personalization is not going to be, should not be in the hand of humans, but more about, creating the link, giving meaning, and providing strategy. But I deeply think, and I think we've seen that in many science fiction movies, that the human touch, which is sometimes disorganized, is providing emotional insight to interaction and to learning. Because sometimes, like maybe in this interview, I'm not saying that that's what you did, but jumping from one question to another, that is not the exact original plan, is more effective. And that's something that the human touch is providing and that AI is not providing, as it's replicating the probability of what people have done before. So it doesn't work in that way. So obviously, not only I think that the human touch is going to be more about facilitating, providing feedback, giving meaning and strategy, but it's also going to be able to improve the way we are memorizing content and experiences by giving the human touch, which is not perfectly organized.
Yeah, I think, the ability to think in an agile way absolutely is a human condition that not everybody has. It's not
great.
Everybody in the population has this skill, but yeah, I think that's a good point. Last one, right? The closing question. We're at the end of our questions, but the closing question I ask everybody, or I try and ask everybody if I remember, is the future. Is it utopia or dystopia?
Whoa. Can I say a bit of both?
Yeah, sure.
Does it work? I don't think there's one future. It's not my view. I don't think that we are moving to either a dystopia or utopia. I think that we are moving in a direction where people are going to have even more capabilities. If you just look at the big picture and talking about 50 to 100 years, we have way more possibilities right now. You can still live in the mountains and be self-sustainable, right? But you can also build a unicorn with one AI agent. And that's not something that you could do 200 years ago, 300 years ago, if you were not coming from a right family back in the medieval age. So I don't think we're going into one direction. I think we're going into a direction where everything is possible, where you could be able to save and actually challenge medicine industry. You can challenge them with just one AI and finding a cure to cancer, just one searcher, in the lab. So how do you call that? You call it utopia or dystopia? It's just, and you can still be a Mormon and decide to be disconnected from that. I think we're going to be living in a world full of possibilities if people have a better understanding of the ecological problem, obviously, which AI is not helping. But if we have a tomorrow, meaning we have a 2050, 2100 maybe one day, then we'll have a world full of possibilities, I think.
Pretty good answer. I'll reflect on my answer as well. But I think for me, it's dystopian. And the reason for that is that you've said exactly a bunch of things that I think where we have possibilities beyond our wildest dreams. But I'll draw the parallel with the music industry. And when we had this, we used to have a selection process where the bands that were popular would come through and the bands that weren't popular would not come through. Now you have a situation where everybody can put whatever they want online all the time, and there's too much stuff. You can't keep up with it. You don't really know how to find things. Everybody's somehow an aspiring musician, which is great. Human expression of creativity is important. And the whole industry effectively is in disarray. It's difficult to see what the path is for the future to come through, where most of the money is filtered into a handful of big bands and the rest of the industry basically doesn't exist. We have that possibility with pretty much every area of business. Doesn't matter what the area is, you can do that now. This is the unicorn idea that you just mentioned. On the flip side, you have the competition angle, and the competition angle means that normal distribution of capabilities, you have a mean and you have standard deviations from the mean, and most people are not top performers. Of course, that's the way distribution works. But the capability of the machine in many areas, not every area, the capability of the machine is now greater than the mean in many areas. We will reach a point where the capability of the machine is greater than the mean in most areas, and it's significantly greater than the mean. At that point, people are competing with machines. When people are competing with machines are going to win because reliability, standardization, cost effectiveness are going to be the way that businesses move forward. And that means we all talk about upskilling the population and the workforce. It's not pragmatic to say we're going to upskill the population to the same speed and level as we are currently developing AI models. The speed of these two things is not the same. So we'll reach a point where most people cannot compete for the jobs that they do. That leads to societal problems. That leads to ways that we need to consider how we solve these problems. And it leads to consideration of solving these problems in an industry, many industries that are in disarray and in chaos. So for me, the answer is dystopia.
Got it. I got it. But the good thing about that is like, whatever how fast is the society moving and jobs are being, let's say, pushed a bit in their, is it still better to have humans competing with computers? The good thing is for the people who are listening is that if we change, and we create new works and we change the way we're doing works, there will always be a training department, right? And the training department should be the last one to disappear if you think about it. Because if tomorrow we are all manual workers, for instance, I need to teach you to reskill to be a manual worker. So at the end of the day, aren't we the one that will be addressed at the last time? I'm just wondering if you think about it and it's changing that fast. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the devolution of learning to people is more important than having a department that tries to control that. We need people to learn. Fundamentally, absolutely agree with that. Whether that's a department or whether people take ownership of themselves, I think that's to be seen. But yeah, interesting debate, interesting conversation. Alex, thank you for joining. And if you're watching this, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow on Spotify. You can see this on YouTube and on Instagram as well. We'll post some copies of this on LinkedIn for you to have a look at. So feel free to check out the entirety of work that we do, as well as to follow Alex and be in touch with EdTake, his company as well. Alex, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ashwin. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.